You are listening to Miniature Masterpiece.
Chapter 1. The Man Who Was Going Nowhere. I recall the day vividly, the sun hanging low in the sky as I stood on the bustling pier, the cacophony of sailors and merchants creating a constant hum. I, Edward Prendick, found myself in a peculiar situation, with no specific destination in mind. My journey had begun unexpectedly, leading me to board the ship, Lady Vane, as a passenger without a true course. The vessel was a sturdy one, built to withstand the most violent tempests. As I stood by the rail, I pondered my fate, unsure of the path that lay ahead. The air was charged with excitement and anticipation, yet my heart weighed heavy with uncertainty. It was during this contemplation that I first encountered the enigmatic man who would later be revealed as the infamous Dr. Moreau. He was a tall, gaunt figure, his angular features and hollow cheeks a testament to years of toil and dedication. His eyes, an unnerving shade of gray, seemed to peer into the depths of one's soul, leaving no secrets untouched. At first, our interactions were limited, consisting of occasional glances across the deck and the briefest of conversations. However, as the journey progressed, the man became increasingly more forthcoming, revealing fragments of his past and his relentless pursuit of knowledge. Dr. Moreau spoke of his experiments in hushed tones, his voice barely audible above the creaking of the ship's timbers. The nature of his work was still shrouded in mystery, as he guarded his secrets closely. I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease, as the doctor's words painted a picture of a man consumed by his ambitions, heedless of the consequences. As the days turned into weeks, the ship traversed the vast expanse of the ocean, the ever-changing landscape of water and sky blending together in an eternal dance. It was during this time that I came to learn more about the ship's crew, each man harboring his own tale of adventure and misfortune. Among them was a man named Montgomery, an enigmatic figure who seemed to share a history with Dr. Moreau. Their relationship was a complex one, marked by an unspoken understanding and a mutual sense of purpose. The crew, for the most part, kept their distance from the doctor, their whispers and furtive glances betraying their unease in his presence. Even the captain, a seasoned sailor who had seen the world in all its beauty and horror, could not conceal his disquiet. As we ventured further into the unknown, the mystery surrounding Dr. Moreau and his work only seemed to deepen. I found myself inexplicably drawn to the man, my curiosity piqued by the enigma that he presented. Yet, with each revelation, my unease grew, and I began to question the wisdom of my decision to embark on this voyage. It was not until the fateful day that the Lady Vane met her untimely end that the full extent of Dr. Moreau's work would be revealed to me. The ship, caught in the grip of a merciless storm, was dashed against the unforgiving rocks, her proud hull shattered and her crew scattered to the winds. Amidst the chaos and despair, I found myself clinging to a piece of wreckage, the cold waves threatening to drag me into the abyss. As I fought for my life, the image of Dr. Moreau and his enigmatic eyes haunted me, a portent of the horrors that lay ahead. Little did I know that the treacherous waters would carry me to the shores of a nightmarish island, where the twisted creations of a man's hubris would challenge my very understanding of the world and the limits of morality. When I finally washed ashore, exhausted and half drowned, I found myself on a desolate beach, its white sand stretching out before me like a blank canvas awaiting the strokes of an artist's brush. The sun had long since vanished beneath the horizon, leaving behind a sky awash with hues of deep indigo and violet. In the distance, I could discern the dark silhouette of a forest, its dense foliage hinting at the secrets that lay hidden within. As I struggled to my feet, I was gripped by a sense of foreboding, as if the island itself were watching me, weighing my worth and deciding my fate. Yet, in that moment of desperation, I had little choice but to press on, driven by the hope that I might find some vestige of civilization among the wild and untamed landscape. As I ventured deeper into the island's heart, the shadows grew darker and the air more oppressive, the weight of the unseen bearing down upon me. It was then that I first heard the chilling cries of the creatures that would come to define my time on this accursed place. Their voices were an eerie cacophony, a blend of the familiar and the grotesque, as if the very fabric of nature had been torn asunder and stitched back together in a mockery of its original form. My heart raced, the terror rising in my chest like a suffocating wave, and I knew that I had stumbled upon something truly horrifying. As I continued my journey, I would come to learn more about Dr. Moreau's creations, the beast folk, and the terrible price they had paid for their forced evolution. The island would become a prison, a living nightmare from which I could find no escape, and my only hope would be to confront the man responsible for my suffering and demand answers. But as I delved further into the twisted world that Dr. Moreau had created, I would come to question not only his sanity, but my own as well. The lines between man and beast blurred, the boundaries of morality stretched to the breaking point, and I would be forced to confront the darkest corners of my own soul. In the days to come, I would witness the tragic consequences of Dr. Moreau's ambitions, as the beast folk struggled to maintain their fragile grip on their newfound humanity. The island would become a battleground, its inhabitants locked in a desperate struggle for survival, as the relentless march of nature sought to reclaim what had been stolen from her. Through it all, I would be haunted by the specter of Dr. Moreau, a man who had dared to play God and paid a terrible price for his hubris. As I faced the horrors of the island and searched for a means to escape its nightmarish grip, I would be forced to confront the limits of human knowledge and the terrible consequences of tampering with the natural order. And so, my tale begins, a story of horror, betrayal, and the indomitable spirit of man, set against the backdrop of a world where the lines between science and madness had been irrevocably blurred. It is a tale that I hope will serve as a warning to future generations, a reminder of the terrible price we may pay when we seek to unlock the secrets of the universe without considering the consequences. Chapter 2. The Cargo of the Lady Vain. The Lady Vain had set sail under a cloud of secrecy. Her cargo manifest a closely guarded secret known only to the captain and a select few. As a mere passenger, I had been privy to neither the ship's purpose nor the nature of its mysterious freight. The crew had been tight-lipped, their faces betraying a mix of curiosity and unease that only served to deepen the sense of mystery that pervaded the vessel. In the days following the shipwreck, as I struggled to survive on the island's unforgiving shores, my thoughts would often return to the Lady Vain and the secrets she had carried to her watery grave. What had been so important, so valuable, that the ship's owners had deemed it worth the risk of such a perilous voyage? And what connection did it have to the enigmatic Dr. Moreau and his sinister experiments? It was not until I encountered Montgomery and his peculiar entourage that I would begin to unravel the truth behind the ship's ill-fated journey. Montgomery, an erstwhile associate of Dr. Moreau, had been tasked with procuring the materials necessary for the doctor's work, a duty that had led him to cross paths with the Lady Vane and her mysterious cargo. Montgomery's motivations were murky, his allegiance to Moreau seemingly driven by a mixture of loyalty and self-interest. As I came to know him, I could not help but wonder what had compelled him to join forces with a man whose work defied the very laws of nature, and whether he truly understood the implications of the experiments that he had helped to facilitate. As we ventured deeper into the island's heart, the nature of the Lady Vane's cargo would become painfully clear. The crates that had been stowed away in the ship's hold contained an assortment of exotic animals, their forms twisted and deformed by the cruel hand of science. These creatures, once proud and majestic, had been reduced to mere tools, their bodies and minds subjected to unimaginable pain in the name of progress. The sight of these unfortunate beasts, the victims of Dr. Moreau's misguided ambitions, would haunt me for the remainder of my time on the island. I could not help but wonder what kind of man could inflict such suffering on another living being, and whether the pursuit of knowledge could ever justify such cruelty. As I grappled with these questions, my thoughts would often return to the crew of the Lady Vane, the men who had unwittingly played a part in this macabre tale. Had they known the true nature of their cargo, or had they too been kept in the dark, ignorant of the horrors that lurked within the ship's bowels? And what of the captain, a man whose weathered face spoke of a lifetime at sea and 1,000 stories untold? Had he known the truth? And if so, had he been a willing participant, or merely a pawn in a game beyond his understanding? As the days turned into weeks and the island's secrets slowly revealed themselves, I would come to learn that the cargo of the Lady Vane was but a small piece of a much larger puzzle, one that would force me to confront not only the depths of human cruelty, but the very nature of what it meant to be alive. The island, with its twisted landscapes and monstrous inhabitants, was a living testament to the dangers of unchecked ambition, a cautionary tale that would haunt me for the rest of my days. In the shadow of Dr. Moreau's legacy, I would struggle to make sense of the world that he had created, searching for meaning in the chaos and madness that had been unleashed upon the island. And as I confronted the horrors that awaited me at every turn, I would come to realize that the true cargo of the Lady Vane was not the unfortunate animals that had been subjected to Dr. Moreau's experiments, but the weight of the questions that their existence raised, questions that would forever change the course of my life. The island was a crucible, a place where the boundaries of morality and ethics had been pushed to their breaking point, and where the very nature of life itself had been called into question. In this nightmarish world, I would be forced to confront the darkest aspects of humanity, as well as the potential for greatness that lay within us all. As I forged unlikely alliances and faced unimaginable dangers, I would come to understand that the true value of the Lady Vane's cargo was not in the physical specimens that had been so cruelly manipulated, but in the lessons that their existence could teach us. Through their suffering, I would learn of the terrible consequences that could arise when the pursuit of knowledge was allowed to run unchecked, and the importance of tempering our ambitions with compassion and understanding. In the end, the cargo of the Lady Vane would serve as both a warning and a challenge, a reminder of the terrible power that we wield as human beings, and the responsibility that we bear to wield that power wisely. The island of Dr. Moreau, with its twisted landscapes and tormented inhabitants, would remain forever etched in my memory, a stark reminder of the terrible price that we may pay when we lose sight of our own humanity. And as I eventually left the island behind, carried away by the unforgiving currents of the ocean, I would carry with me not only the memories of the horrors that I had witnessed, but the knowledge that the true cargo of the Lady Vane was not the sum of its physical components, but the weight of the questions that it had raised and the lessons that it had taught me. In the face of the darkness that had consumed the island and its inhabitants, I would cling to the hope that the legacy of Dr. Moreau and his experiments would serve as a cautionary tale for future generations, a reminder of the delicate balance that exists between the pursuit of knowledge and the preservation of our humanity. And in that hope, I would find the strength to carry on, forever changed by the experiences that I had lived through and the truths that. Chapter 3: The Strange Face. As I continued to navigate the treacherous terrain of the island, with only my instincts and a deep sense of unease to guide me, I found myself drawn to the darker corners of the landscape, the places where the shadows grew long and the air hung heavy with the scent of decay. It was in one of these forgotten places that I first encountered the strange face, a visage that would haunt my nightmares for years to come. The creature that bore this disquieting countenance was unlike anything I had ever seen, its form a grotesque amalgamation of human and animal features that seemed to defy the very laws of nature. Its eyes, wide and unblinking, bore into me with an unsettling intensity, as if they sought to pierce the veil of my soul and lay bare the secrets that lay hidden within. As I stood before this abomination, my heart pounding in my chest and my breath coming in ragged gasps, I could not help but wonder what sort of twisted mind could have brought such a creature into existence. Was this the result of some terrible accident, a cruel twist of fate that had left this unfortunate being forever trapped between two worlds? Or was it something more sinister, a deliberate act of malice that spoke to the darker aspects of human nature? As I delved deeper into the mysteries of the island and its inhabitants, I would come to learn that the strange face was but one of many, each more disturbing than the last. These creatures, the beast folk, were the product of Dr. Moreau's experiments, his attempts to elevate animals to the level of humans by manipulating their very essence. The more I learned about Dr. Moreau and his twisted ambitions, the more I found myself drawn to the beast folk and their tragic existence. These beings, caught between the worlds of man and beast, were a living testament to the dangers of unchecked ambition, their suffering a direct result of one man's misguided quest for knowledge. As I interacted with these creatures, I could not help but be struck by the humanity that lay hidden beneath their monstrous exteriors. Despite their terrifying appearance and their tortured pasts, they possessed a depth of emotion and a capacity for understanding that was both surprising and humbling. In the eyes of the beast folk, I saw a reflection of my own fears and desires, a stark reminder of the shared bond that connects all living things. And as I struggled to come to terms with the horrors that I had witnessed, I found myself grappling with a difficult question. Was it possible to see past the strange face and recognize the humanity that lay within? As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, I would find myself drawn ever deeper into the world of the beast folk, their stories becoming inextricably entwined with my own. I would learn of their dreams and their heartaches, their triumphs and their failures, and the fragile hope that sustained them in the face of overwhelming adversity. And through it all, I would be haunted by the strange face that had first drawn me into this nightmarish world, a face that had come to symbolize the darkest aspects of human nature and the terrible consequences of unchecked ambition. In the end, as I stood on the shores of the island, watching the waves crash against the rocks and feeling the weight of all that I had witnessed bearing down upon me, I would be forced to confront the truth about the strange face and the beast folk. These creatures, the products of one man's hubris, were not monsters, but victims, their suffering a stark reminder of the delicate balance that exists between the pursuit of knowledge and the preservation of our humanity. Chapter 4. At the Schooner's Rail. The schooner that had brought Montgomery and his strange companions to the island lay anchored just off the coast, her sails flapping gently in the breeze as she bobbed upon the restless waves. As I stood at the rail, my eyes fixed upon the distant shore, and my thoughts consumed by the horrors that I had witnessed, I could not help but wonder what fate awaited me on this forsaken land. The ship, a sleek and formidable vessel that bore the scars of countless battles and storms, seemed a world away from the twisted landscapes and monstrous inhabitants of the island. Yet, as I would soon discover, she was not immune to the darkness that pervaded this place, her crew harboring secrets of their own. As I wandered the ship's narrow corridors and cramped quarters, I found myself drawn to the men who called her home. They were a motley assortment of sailors and misfits, their faces etched with the lines of 1,000 stories untold. Among them, I sensed a shared sense of unease, as if they too were aware of the sinister forces that held sway over the island. As the days wore on and the ship remained anchored in the bay, I began to grow restless, my thoughts consumed by the terrible truth that I had uncovered. The island, with its twisted experiments and tormented inhabitants, was a living nightmare, a place where the darkest aspects of human nature were given free rein. The schooner, for all her strength and beauty, seemed powerless in the face of this evil, her crew unable or unwilling to challenge the authority of Dr. Moreau and his sinister machinations. And as I stood at her rail, gazing out at the horizon and searching for any sign of hope or salvation, I could not help but wonder what role I was meant to play in this macabre tale. In my moments of solitude, as I stood at the schooner's rail and contemplated the vast expanse of ocean that stretched out before me, I found myself wrestling with the questions that had haunted me since my arrival on the island. Was there any hope for the beast folk, the unfortunate creatures who had been subjected to Dr. Moreau's cruel experiments? And what of the men who had brought them to this place, the sailors and misfits who called the schooner home? Were they too beyond redemption, or was there a chance that they might yet find their way back to the light? As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, I would find my thoughts returning again and again to the schooner and her crew, their stories becoming inextricably entwined with my own. I would learn of their dreams and their heartaches, their triumphs and their failures, and the fragile hope that sustained them in the face of overwhelming adversity. And through it all, I would be haunted by the image of the schooner, her proud figurehead slicing through the waves as she carried her cargo of secrets and sorrows towards an uncertain future. She was a symbol of the indomitable spirit of man, a testament to our capacity for hope and resilience in the face of unimaginable darkness. As I prepared to leave the island behind, my heart heavy with the weight of all that I had witnessed, I would find solace in the memory of the schooner and her crew. They were a reminder that, even in the darkest of times, there remained a glimmer of hope, a flickering light that guided us through the storm and towards a brighter tomorrow. And as I stood at the schooner's rail, gazing out at the horizon and feeling the salts prey on my face, I knew that I would carry that hope with me, a beacon that would guide me through the trials and triumphs that lay ahead. For in the face of the darkness that had consumed the island and its inhabitants, I would cling to the belief that we, as human beings, possessed the strength and the courage to overcome even the most insurmountable of odds. The schooner, with her tattered sails and weathered hull, would remain a symbol of this enduring belief, a testament to the power of hope and determination in the face of adversity. And as I left the island behind, her shadow disappearing into the distance as the waves carried me towards an uncertain future, I would carry with me not only the memories of the horrors that I had witnessed, but the knowledge that, even in the darkest of times, there remained a light that could guide us through the storm. As I stood at the schooner's rail, watching the sun rise over the distant horizon and feeling the wind at my back, I knew that my journey was far from over. The island of Dr. Moreau, with its twisted landscapes and tormented inhabitants, would remain forever etched in my memory, a stark reminder of the terrible price that we may pay when we lose sight of our own humanity. But with every passing day, as I sailed further and further from the island and the darkness that it represented, I would find solace in the knowledge that, even in the face of unimaginable evil, there remained a force greater than ourselves, a force that could guide us through the storm and towards a brighter tomorrow. And in that knowledge, I would find the strength to carry on, forever changed by the experiences that I had lived through and the truths that I had been forced to confront. In the end, as I stood at the schooner's rail and gazed out at the vast expanse of ocean that stretched out before me, I would come to understand that my journey was not simply one of escape or salvation, but one of discovery and understanding. The island of Dr. Moreau, with its twisted experiments and tortured inhabitants, had taught me much about the darker aspects of human nature and the terrible consequences of unchecked ambition. But in the face of that darkness, I had also discovered the power of hope and resilience, the unyielding determination that lies at the heart of the human spirit. And as I sailed towards the horizon, leaving the island and its horrors behind, I knew that I would carry that knowledge with me, a beacon of hope in the face of the darkness that would forever haunt my dreams. Chapter 5. The Captain's Advice. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the island in a dusky glow, I sought solace in the company of the schooner's captain. A grizzled man with a weathered face and eyes that had seen more than their fair share of hardship, he possessed a quiet strength that seemed to defy the darkness that hung over this place. We stood together on the ship's deck, our gazes fixed upon the distant shore, as I shared with him the horrors that I had witnessed and the terrible truth that lay at the heart of the island's mysteries. The captain listened in silence, his eyes never leaving the horizon, as I recounted the twisted experiments of Dr. Moreau and the tortured existence of the beast folk. When I had finished, he turned to me, his gaze steady and his voice tinged with a quiet sadness. "Son," he said, his words heavy with the weight of experience, "there are things in this world that defy understanding, forces that dwell in the shadows and threaten to consume us if we let them. What you have seen on this island is but one example of the darkness that exists within the human heart, a darkness that can drive even the most brilliant of minds to the brink of madness." As he spoke, I could not help but be struck by the wisdom of his words and the calm certainty with which he delivered them. This was a man who had faced the darkness and emerged from the other side, his spirit unbowed and his resolve unshaken. It is not for us to judge the actions of men like Dr. Moreau, the captain continued, his gaze returning to the horizon. The path they walk is one fraught with peril, and it is all too easy to lose one's way. But nor can we ignore the suffering that their actions have caused, the lives that have been irrevocably altered by their misguided quest for knowledge. He turned to face me, his eyes searching my own, as if seeking to divine the thoughts that lay hidden within. What you have seen on this island will stay with you forever. Of that I have no doubt. But it is up to you to decide how you will carry that burden, and what you will do with the knowledge that has been thrust upon you. As I stood there, my heart heavy with the weight of all that I had witnessed, I found solace in the captain's words and the wisdom that lay behind them. In the face of the darkness that had consumed the island and its inhabitants, it was up to me to find a way to move forward, to use the terrible truths that I had uncovered to bring about change and, perhaps, to prevent such horrors from happening again. You must not allow the darkness to define you, the captain advised, his voice soft but resolute. For in doing so, you risk becoming a part of it yourself. Instead, seek out the light that exists within you, the strength and the courage that have carried you this far. Use that light to guide you through the storm and towards a brighter future, one in which the horrors of the past serve as a reminder of the challenges that lie ahead. With those words, the captain left me to my thoughts, his footsteps fading into the night as I stood alone on the ship's deck. As I gazed out at the island, now shrouded in darkness, I knew that the captain's advice would stay with me long after the memories of Dr. Moreau and his twisted creations had faded. For it was not the horrors that I had witnessed that would define me, but the choices that I made in the face of those horrors, and the strength that I found within myself to confront them. And as I stood there in the fading light, the weight of the captain's words settling heavily upon my shoulders, I knew that it was up to me to carry that light forward, to use it as a beacon of hope in a world that too often seemed to be consumed by darkness. As the days passed and the schooner carried me further and further from the island and its horrors, I found myself reflecting upon the captain's advice and the wisdom that lay at its heart. In a world filled with darkness, it was all too easy to become consumed by it, to lose oneself in the shadows and forget the light that existed within each and every one of us. But as I stood on the ship's deck, the wind in my hair and the sun on my face, I knew that I would not allow the darkness to define me. I would carry the memories of the island and the terrible truths that I had uncovered with me, not as a burden, but as a reminder of the power that we possessed as human beings to overcome even the most insurmountable of odds. For in the end, it was not the darkness that would shape our destiny, but the light that we chose to shine upon it. And with every passing day, as the distance between myself and the island grew ever greater, I would hold fast to that light, knowing that it was the key to a brighter future, one in which the horrors of the past served as a guidepost to the challenges that lay ahead. The captain's advice had been a gift, one that would continue to shape my life long after our paths had diverged. For it was in those moments of darkness, when the weight of the world threatened to overwhelm me, that I would remember his words and the quiet strength that had carried him through the storm. And in that memory, I would find the courage to face the challenges that lay before me, to confront the darkness that dwelled within, and to seek out the light that existed within us all. For it was in that light, and in the choices that we made in the face of adversity, that our true strength lay, and it was with that strength that we would forge a brighter future, one in which the horrors of the island of Dr. Moreau served as a grim reminder of the consequences of our actions and the power that we possess to shape the world around us. And so, as the schooner carried me away from the island and towards an uncertain future, I made a solemn vow to never forget the lessons that I had learned on that distant shore, and to use the knowledge that I had gained to bring about change and to make the world a better place. For it was in that pursuit, and in the struggle against the darkness that threatened to consume us, that I would find my true purpose, and the light that would guide me through the storm. Chapter 6. Montgomery's Motivation. In the days that followed my escape from the island, I found myself drawn to the enigmatic figure of Montgomery, the man who had served as Dr. Moreau's assistant and confidant. A complex and often contradictory character, Montgomery had played a crucial role in the events that had unfolded on that distant shore, and I was eager to understand the motivations that had driven him to take part in Moreau's twisted experiments. As the schooner plowed through the rolling waves, Montgomery and I would often sit together on the deck, our conversations spanning the breadth of human experience, from the depths of despair to the heights of redemption. Through these discussions, I sought to understand the man who had walked alongside Moreau in his quest for knowledge, and to unravel the tangled web of emotions and desires that had led him down that dark and treacherous path. It quickly became apparent that Montgomery was a man haunted by his past, a past that was inextricably linked to the horrors that he had helped to create on the island. As a young medical student, Montgomery had been captivated by the promise of scientific discovery and the prospect of unlocking the secrets of the human body. It was this insatiable thirst for knowledge that had ultimately led him to Moreau and the twisted experiments that would come to define their legacy. But as I listened to Montgomery's story, I began to realize that there was more to his motivations than mere scientific curiosity. Beneath the veneer of intellectual pursuit, there lay a deep-rooted sense of loneliness and isolation, a desperate longing for connection and understanding that had driven him to seek solace in the company of the enigmatic doctor. As Montgomery confided in me, his voice tinged with regret and sorrow, I could not help but be moved by the tragedy of his situation. For in his quest for knowledge and understanding, he had become entangled in a web of darkness and deceit, his actions unwittingly contributing to the suffering and torment of the very creatures he sought to understand. But as I delved deeper into Montgomery's motivations, I also discovered a glimmer of hope amidst the darkness. For despite his involvement in Moreau's experiments, Montgomery had come to recognize the inherent cruelty of their work and the terrible consequences that it had wrought upon the island's inhabitants. This dawning realization had sparked a change in Montgomery, a change that had seen him turn against Moreau and his twisted vision of the world. As he recounted the events that had led to his eventual rebellion, his voice brimming with a newfound resolve, I found myself inspired by the strength of his conviction and the courage that it had taken for him to stand up against the darkness that threatened to consume him. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in a golden glow, I would often reflect upon the lessons that I had learned from Montgomery and the motivations that had shaped his actions. In the face of the darkness that had consumed the island, he had found the strength to seek out the light and to fight for the ideals that he believed in, even when it meant turning against the very man who had given him a purpose and a sense of belonging. In the end, it was this determination to stand up for what was right and to confront the darkness that defined Montgomery's character and the choices that he made on that distant shore. And as I stood on the schooner's deck, the wind in my hair and the world stretching out before me, I knew that it was this same determination that would guide me through the challenges that lay ahead and help me to carry the light that I had found on the island of Dr. Moreau into the world beyond. Chapter 7. The Locked Door. In the weeks that followed my departure from the island, I found my thoughts constantly drawn back to the events that had unfolded there and the terrible secrets that lay hidden behind the locked door of Dr. Moreau's laboratory. It was this locked door, I realized, that had come to symbolize the darker aspects of human nature and the insatiable desire for power and control that had driven Moreau to carry out his twisted experiments. As I pondered the significance of the locked door, I began to see it as a metaphor for the barriers that we, as human beings, construct around ourselves, barriers that prevent us from truly understanding the world and the people who inhabit it. In our quest for knowledge and power, we too often become consumed by our own desires, blinded by our own arrogance, and unable to recognize the consequences of our actions until it is too late. For Moreau, the locked door had represented the ultimate expression of his power and control, a barrier that had allowed him to separate himself from the world and the moral constraints that governed it. But as I had learned during my time on the island, the power that Moreau wielded had come at a terrible cost, not only to the creatures who had been subjected to his experiments, but also to Moreau himself, who had become a prisoner of his own creation. As I stood on the deck of the schooner, the sun casting long shadows across the rolling waves, I found myself wondering if there was a way to break down these barriers, to unlock the doors that separated us from one another and from the truth that lay hidden behind them. Was it possible, I wondered, to find a key that would allow us to see beyond our own desires and the darkness that they so often engendered, to glimpse the true nature of the world and our place within it? As I pondered these questions, I began to realize that the answer lay not in the pursuit of power or the acquisition of knowledge, but in the cultivation of empathy and understanding, the ability to see the world through the eyes of another and to recognize the inherent value and dignity of all living beings. It was this realization, I believed, that had ultimately led Montgomery to turn against Moreau and his twisted vision of the world. And it was this same realization that would guide me as I sought to unlock the doors that separated me from the world and the people who inhabited it. As the schooner carried me further and further from the island and the memories that it held, I knew that I would carry the lessons that I had learned there with me, using them as a guidepost in my quest for understanding and connection. For it was in the recognition of our shared humanity, I believed, that we would find the key to unlocking the doors that separated us and to breaking down the barriers that prevented us from truly understanding one another. And so, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the world was bathed in a golden glow, I made a solemn vow to dedicate my life to the pursuit of empathy and understanding, to strive to see the world through the eyes of others, and to use the knowledge that I had gained on the island of Dr. Moreau to bring about change and to make the world a better place. For in the end, it was not the darkness that would define our destiny, but the light that we chose to shine upon it. And with every passing day, as the distance between myself and the island grew ever greater, I would hold fast to that light, knowing that it was the key to unlocking the doors that separated us and to building a brighter future, one in which the horrors of the past served as a guidepost to the challenges that lay ahead. Chapter 8. The Crying of the Puma. Upon my return to civilization, I found it difficult to shake the memories of the island and the terrible events that had transpired there. One memory, in particular, seemed to haunt my every waking moment. The crying of the puma, a pitiful, heart-wrenching sound that spoke of unimaginable pain and suffering. As I lay in my bed at night, the cries of the puma echoing through my mind, I could not help but be reminded of the terrible price that had been paid in the pursuit of knowledge and power. The puma, like so many of the other creatures on the island, had been subjected to unspeakable torment at the hands of Dr. Moreau and his twisted experiments. its body and mind warped and twisted beyond recognition. It was the crying of the puma, I realized, that had come to symbolize the darker aspects of human nature, the capacity for cruelty and indifference that seemed to lurk just beneath the surface of even the most civilized societies. As I listened to the cries in my mind, I found myself grappling with the question of how such darkness could exist within the human heart, and what could be done to combat it. As I pondered this question, I began to see that the answer lay not in the rejection of knowledge and progress, but in the recognition of our shared responsibility to one another and the world that we inhabited. For it was only through this recognition, I believed, that we could hope to cower the darkness that had taken root on the island and to prevent the suffering that it had engendered. The crying of the puma, I realized, was a call to action, a reminder of the need for vigilance and empathy in the face of the unknown. It was a call to look beyond our own desires and ambitions and to recognize the inherent value and dignity of all living beings, to strive for a world in which the pursuit of knowledge was guided not by the desire for power and control, but by the desire for understanding and connection. It was this realization that had driven me to dedicate my life to the pursuit of empathy and understanding, to use the lessons that I had learned on the island as a guidepost in my quest to unlock the doors that separated us from one another and from the world that we inhabited. For it was in the recognition of our shared humanity, I believed, that we would find the key to overcoming the darkness that had consumed the island and to building a brighter future for all. As I went about my daily life, the cries of the puma serving as a constant reminder of the challenges that lay ahead, I found myself more and more determined to live up to the promise that I had made on the deck of the schooner. I threw myself into my work with renewed vigor, dedicating myself to the pursuit of knowledge and understanding and striving to ensure that the lessons of the island would not be forgotten. And as the months and years passed, as the memories of the island began to fade and the cries of the puma grew ever more distant, I found solace in the knowledge that I was doing my part to combat the darkness that had once threatened to consume me. For in the end, it was not the power that we wielded or the knowledge that we acquired that would define our legacy, but the way in which we chose to use that power and knowledge to make the world a better place. And so, as I stood on the shores of a new century, the sun casting its golden light upon the world, I took comfort in the knowledge that I was not alone in my quest for understanding and connection, and that together, we could unlock the doors that separated us and bring about the change that was so desperately needed. Chapter 9. The Thing in the Forest. Years after my departure from the island, I found myself reflecting on the myriad of experiences that had shaped my understanding of the world and the nature of humanity. Among these memories, one stood out with particular clarity: the discovery of the thing in the forest, a creature whose existence defied all rational explanation and whose presence on the island had served as a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked ambition and the thin line that separated man from beast. As I recalled the events that had led to my encounter with the thing in the forest, I could not help but be struck by the irony of the situation. For it was in my pursuit of knowledge and understanding, in my desire to unlock the doors that separated me from the world and the people who inhabited it, that I had stumbled upon the creature and the terrible secret that it represented. The thing in the forest, I realized, was a living embodiment of the darkness that had taken root on the island, a darkness that had been born of Dr. Moreau's twisted experiments and his insatiable desire for power and control. It was a darkness that had manifested itself not only in the physical form of the creature but also in the psychological torment that it had endured. Its mind a twisted labyrinth of pain and confusion that was as much a prison as the body in which it was trapped. As I reflected on my encounter with the thing in the forest, I began to see that it was not only a symbol of the darkness that had consumed the island, but also a cautionary tale, a warning of the dangers that lay in wait for those who sought to wield power without restraint and to manipulate the world and its inhabitants without regard for the consequences of their actions. It was this realization, I believed, that had driven me to dedicate my life to the pursuit of empathy and understanding, to use the lessons that I had learned on the island as a guidepost in my quest to unlock the doors that separated us from one another and from the world that we inhabited. For it was in the recognition of our shared humanity, I believed, that we would find the key to overcoming the darkness that had threatened to consume us all. As the years passed, and the memories of the island and the thing in the forest began to fade, I found myself more and more committed to the path that I had chosen, dedicating myself to the pursuit of knowledge and understanding and striving to ensure that the lessons of the island would not be forgotten. I immersed myself in my work, seeking out new avenues of research and exploration that would broaden my understanding of the world and its many mysteries. I traveled to far-flung corners of the globe, seeking out new experiences and new perspectives that would challenge my preconceptions and expand my horizons. And as I journeyed through the world, as I sought to unlock the doors that separated us and to bridge the divides that threatened to tear us apart, I found solace in the knowledge that I was not alone in my quest for understanding and connection, that there were others who shared my vision of a world in which the pursuit of knowledge was guided not by the desire for power and control, but by the desire for empathy and understanding. For in the end, it was not the darkness that would define our destiny, but the light that we chose to shine upon it, the light that would guide us through the shadows and illuminate the path to a brighter future, one in which the horrors of the past served as a guidepost to the challenges that lay ahead. Chapter 10. The Crying of the Man-Beast. The island, with its shadowy secrets and unsettling mysteries, was a place where the lines between man and beast had been irrevocably blurred. It was a place where the distinction between humanity and monstrosity was called into question, forcing me to confront the darkest recesses of my own soul. Among the many challenges I faced during my time on the island, perhaps none was as disquieting as the day I discovered the crying of the man-beast. The sun was setting as I ventured deeper into the forest, drawn by an inexplicable force that seemed to pull me towards an unseen destination. As I made my way through the tangled undergrowth, I was suddenly struck by an eerie sound that seemed to echo through the trees, the unmistakable sound of a creature in distress. At first, I could not determine the source of the sound, but as I followed its mournful call, I came upon a sight that would forever haunt my dreams. There, amidst the gnarled roots of an ancient tree, sat a figure that seemed to defy all rational explanation. It was a man, or at least the semblance of one, his form twisted and distorted by the cruel hand of nature, or, more likely, the meddling of an even crueler master. His body was covered in coarse fur, and his face bore the unmistakable features of an animal, but his eyes, those tortured, pleading eyes, were undeniably human. As I approached the man-beast, I felt a mixture of pity and horror, unable to comprehend the suffering that had led to his monstrous transformation. His cries echoed through the forest, the sound of a soul trapped in a prison of flesh and bone, yearning for release from its torment. I knew that I had stumbled upon one of Dr. Moreau's abominations, a living testament to the perverse experiments that had been conducted on the island. For a moment, I hesitated, unsure of how to proceed. My instinct urged me to flee, to escape the twisted reality of the island and return to the safety of my own world. But as I looked into the eyes of the man-beast, I felt a deep sense of empathy for the creature before me, a connection born of our shared humanity and the pain that we had both endured. With a trembling hand, I reached out to the man-beast, attempting to offer comfort and reassurance. To my surprise, the creature did not recoil from my touch but instead leaned into it, his cries subsiding as he seemed to find solace in my presence. It was a small moment of connection, a fleeting glimpse of the bond that united us despite our differences. In that moment, I realized that the man-beast, like all of Dr. Moreau's creations, was a victim of the darkest aspects of human nature: the desire for power and control, the willingness to manipulate and destroy in the name of progress. He was a living testament to the consequences of our unchecked ambition, a reminder of the dangers of playing God and attempting to bend the world to our will. As I stood there with the man-beast, I made a silent vow to do whatever it took to put an end to Dr. Moreau's experiments and to restore the natural order of the island. It was a vow born of compassion and empathy, a commitment to stand against the darkness and to fight for the light that existed within us all. As I would soon discover, however, the path to redemption would not be an easy one. The island held many more secrets, and the line between man and beast would continue to blur as I delved deeper into the shadows of Dr. Moreau's domain. But as I walked away from the man-beast that day, my resolve was strengthened, my determination fueled by the knowledge that I was not alone in my struggle. In the days that followed, I encountered more of Dr. Moreau's creations, each one a testament to the twisted genius of the man who had fashioned them. I saw the suffering etched on their faces, the confusion and fear that haunted their every waking moment. And as I bore witness to the atrocities that had been perpetrated on the island, I felt a growing sense of responsibility for the lives that had been irrevocably altered by Dr. Moreau's experiments. As I continued to explore the island, I sought out allies in my quest to overthrow Dr. Moreau and his twisted regime. I found solace in the company of others who, like me, had been cast adrift on this island of nightmares. Together, we formed a fragile alliance, bound by our shared desire to bring an end to the suffering that had been inflicted upon the inhabitants of the island. But even as we banded together, we were constantly reminded of the ever-present danger that lurked in the shadows. Dr. Moreau's experiments had left their mark on the island, and we were never truly safe from the monstrous creations that roamed its forests and beaches. The crying of the man-beast echoed in my ears, a constant reminder of the stakes of our mission and the lives that hung in the balance. As our struggle continued, I found that the line between man and beast had not only blurred within the confines of the island, but within myself as well. The darkness that I had encountered in Dr. Moreau's experiments seemed to seep into my very soul, forcing me to confront my own capacity for cruelty and violence. It was a harrowing journey, one that tested the limits of my humanity and my ability to hold on to the hope that had sustained me throughout my time on the island. Yet, in the end, it was this hope, this unwavering belief in the power of redemption and the possibility of a better future that saw me through the darkest days of my journey. As I stood against the forces of darkness, united with my fellow castaways in our fight for justice and compassion, I knew that we had a chance to make a difference, to restore the balance that had been so cruelly disrupted by Dr. Moreau and his experiments. The crying of the man-beast would become a rallying cry, a symbol of the suffering that we sought to end and the future that we hoped to build on the island of Dr. Moreau. And though our struggle was far from over, I knew that we had taken the first steps towards reclaiming our humanity and forging a new destiny for ourselves and the inhabitants of the island. Chapter 11. The Hunting of the Man. In the days following my encounter with the man-beast, the delicate balance of power on the island began to shift. As our small band of allies grew stronger, the whispers of rebellion grew louder. We knew that the time had come to confront Dr. Moreau and his abominable creations, to put an end to the suffering that had plagued the island for far too long. The hunting of the man, a perverse reversal of the natural order, would soon commence. One fateful day, as the sun sank below the horizon and darkness enveloped the island, we gathered in secret to devise our plan of attack. We knew that to defeat Dr. Moreau, we would need to strike at the very heart of his operation, to dismantle the twisted machinery that had given life to his monstrous creations. Our first target would be the compound, the fortress-like structure where Dr. Moreau and his loyal assistant, Montgomery, conducted their experiments and exerted their control over the island. With stealth and cunning, we approached the compound under the cover of night, our hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. As we crept through the shadows, the eerie cries of the creatures that inhabited the island seemed to grow louder, as if sensing the impending conflict that was about to unfold. The hunting of the man had begun, and the stakes had never been higher. As we neared the compound, we were met with a sight that filled us with horror and disgust. The walls of the structure were lined with the twisted bodies of Dr. Moreau's creations, their forms contorted into grotesque parodies of both man and beast. It was a chilling reminder of the depths of depravity to which the mad scientist had sunk, and it steeled our resolve to put an end to his reign of terror once and for all. We breached the compound's defenses, our small band of rebels moving with a single-minded purpose. The sounds of battle rang out through the night, as the hunters became the hunted, and the tables were turned on Dr. Moreau and his minions. We fought with every ounce of strength and cunning we possessed, driven by the knowledge that failure was not an option. In the heat of battle, I found myself face to face with one of Dr. Moreau's most fearsome creations, a towering beast, half man, half tiger, with thighs that burned with a primal rage. As we fought, our movements a deadly dance of predator and prey, I was reminded once more of the thin line that separated man from beast, and the darkness that lurked within us all. But in that moment, as we grappled for our very survival, I also discovered a strength that I had not known. I possessed the strength to stand against the darkness, to fight for the light that still burned within the hearts of the island's inhabitants. With a final, desperate blow, I felled the beast, its once fierce eyes now dimmed with the finality of death. With the compound secured, we pressed deeper into Dr. Moreau's lair, determined to put an end to his twisted experiments once and for all. We found the laboratory, a place where the lines between life and death, man and beast, had been irrevocably blurred. It was there that we confronted the man himself, Dr. Moreau, his once brilliant mind now consumed by madness and the lust for power. In the end, it was not by force of arms that we defeated Dr. Moreau, but by the strength of our conviction and the unyielding belief in the power of redemption. Confronted with the enormity of his crimes and the suffering he had inflicted upon the island, Dr. Moreau finally broke, his mad facade crumbling as he came to realize the true horror of his actions. In that moment of revelation, he abandoned his twisted dreams of power and control, and we watched as the man who had once held sway over the island and its inhabitants was reduced to a broken, pitiful figure. With Dr. Moreau defeated and his experiments brought to an end, we set about the task of rebuilding the island and its society. The once terrifying creatures that had been created in the name of science now stood alongside us, their human hearts and minds finally free from the darkness that had once consumed them. Together, we forged a new future for the island, built on the foundations of compassion, understanding, and the unbreakable bonds of our shared humanity. As the sun rose over the island, signaling the dawn of a new day and a new beginning, I looked upon the faces of my fellow survivors, men, women, and beasts alike, and marveled at the resilience of the human spirit, the strength that could be found in even the darkest of times. The hunting of the man had come to an end, and we had emerged victorious, our souls tempered by the fires of adversity and the knowledge that we were stronger together than we could ever be apart. The island of Dr. Moreau would forever stand as a testament to the folly of man's hubris and the dangers of unchecked scientific ambition, but it would also serve as a beacon of hope, a reminder of the power of redemption and the indomitable spirit of mankind. And as I gazed upon the horizon, watching the sun rise higher and higher into the sky, I knew that the legacy of the island and the lessons we had learned there would live on long after the echoes of our battles had faded away. In the end, the island of Dr. Moreau would become a symbol of our shared humanity, a testament to the strength that could be found in the face of adversity, and a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope, always the chance for redemption, and always the possibility of a brighter future. Chapter 12. The Sayers of the Law. In the aftermath of Dr. Moreau's fall, the island faced a critical turning point. The once terrifying creatures, now freed from their master's control, sought guidance and understanding as they navigated their newfound freedom. It became apparent that a new order was needed, a set of laws to govern the actions and behavior of the island's inhabitants. Thus, the Sayers of the Law were born. These newly appointed leaders, drawn from the ranks of the former beasts and humans alike, were entrusted with the responsibility of upholding justice and maintaining the fragile peace that had been established. The Sayers of the Law were chosen for their wisdom, courage, and unwavering commitment to the greater good, and they quickly set about the task of crafting a new code of conduct for the island's diverse population. The law, as it came to be known, was a reflection of the lessons learned during our time on the island. It emphasized the importance of compassion, understanding, and mutual respect, values that had been sorely lacking during Dr. Moreau's reign. The law also sought to strike a delicate balance between the need for order and the desire for freedom, allowing the island's inhabitants to forge their own path while adhering to a common set of principles. As the Sayers of the Law worked tirelessly to develop the new code, they faced numerous challenges and setbacks. They had to navigate the delicate complexities of the island's diverse population, addressing the unique needs and concerns of each individual while maintaining a unified vision for the greater good. Moreover, they had to overcome the lingering scars of the past, the memories of the atrocities committed under Dr. Moreau's rule that still haunted many of the island's inhabitants. Despite these obstacles, the Sayers of the Law remained steadfast in their commitment to their cause, their belief in the power of redemption and the possibility of a brighter future never wavering. Slowly but surely, the law began to take shape, and the island's inhabitants started to embrace the new order, recognizing the wisdom and fairness of the principles that guided it. With the law in place, the island began to transform, the seeds of hope and renewal taking root in the hearts and minds of its people. The once fearsome creatures, now guided by the wisdom and compassion of the sayers of the law, began to discover their own humanity, the bonds of friendship and trust that had been so cruelly denied to them during their time under Dr. Moreau's control. The island's human inhabitants, too, found solace and strength in the law, their fears and suspicions slowly giving way to a sense of camaraderie and shared purpose. As time went on, the sayers of the law continued to uphold the principles that had brought the island back from the brink of chaos, their commitment to justice and the greater good unwavering. The legacy of Dr. Moreau, while still a painful reminder of the horrors of the past, also served as a powerful motivator, driving the island's inhabitants to strive for a better future and to learn from the mistakes of the past. In this new era, the island of Dr. Moreau became a symbol of hope, a testament to the power of redemption and the resilience of the human spirit. The sayers of the law, their words and deeds guided by the principles that had saved the island from the darkness, stood as a shining example of what could be achieved when the forces of compassion, understanding, and justice were allowed to prevail. And so, the island of Dr. Moreau, once a place of unimaginable terror and suffering, became a beacon of light in a world often shrouded in darkness. The law, and the sayers who upheld it, served as a constant reminder of the power of unity and the strength that could be found in the face of adversity. The island itself began to heal, the once barren landscape giving way to lush forests and thriving ecosystems. The creatures and humans, now united under the guidance of the sayers of the law, worked together to build a new society, one that was founded on the principles of empathy, cooperation, and mutual respect. Slowly but surely, the island became a haven for those seeking refuge from the cruelties and injustices of the outside world, a sanctuary where the wounds of the past could be healed and the promise of a brighter future could be realized. As the years passed, the legend of the island of Dr. Moreau and its remarkable transformation spread far and wide, inspiring others to question the rigid boundaries that separated man from beast, and to recognize the inherent dignity and worth of all living creatures. The sayers of the law, once feared as the monstrous creations of a madman, were now celebrated as the architects of a new era of peace and understanding, their wisdom and courage a testament to the enduring resilience of the human spirit. And so, the island of Dr. Moreau, a place that had once been synonymous with unspeakable horror and suffering, became a shining example of the power of redemption and the transformative potential of hope. The law, and the sayers who upheld it, stood as a constant reminder that even in the darkest of times, the light of compassion, understanding, and justice could still be found, guiding the way toward a brighter and more just world. In the end, the legacy of Dr. Moreau and his twisted experiments would not be defined by the pain and suffering they had wrought, but by the remarkable transformation that had occurred in their wake. The island, once a place of darkness and despair, had become a beacon of light and hope, proof that even the most broken of souls could find redemption and healing, and that the power of unity and compassion could triumph over even the most insurmountable of obstacles. And so, the story of the island of Dr. Moreau and its remarkable journey from the depths of darkness to the heights of hope would be passed down through the ages, an enduring testament to the power of the human spirit and the unbreakable bonds of compassion, understanding, and justice that bind us all together. Chapter 13. A Parley. In the days that followed, the island's inhabitants found themselves at a crossroads. The sayers of the law had emerged as the guiding force of the community, but questions remained about the path forward. The islanders were divided in their opinions, and tensions were beginning to simmer beneath the surface. It was clear that a parley was needed to address the concerns of the community and decide upon the course of action. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm, golden glow across the island, the inhabitants gathered in the central clearing. The air was charged with anticipation, as men and beast folk alike prepared to share their thoughts and opinions on the matter at hand. The parley began with an impassioned speech from the leader of the sayers of the law, who called for unity and cooperation among the island's inhabitants. He spoke of the need to forge a new identity and purpose for the island, one that would be defined by the values of compassion, understanding, and justice. He urged the islanders to put aside their differences and work together to create a better future for all. The speech was met with a mixture of reactions from the assembled crowd. Some were moved by the sayer's words and eagerly embraced the idea of a unified island society. Others, however, were less enthusiastic about the prospect of change, fearing that the loss of their individual identities would leave them vulnerable to the whims of the majority. The parley continued late into the night, as various members of the community stepped forward to voice their thoughts and concerns. There were arguments for and against the sayer's vision of unity, as well as alternative suggestions for how the island should be governed and organized. As the hours passed and the night wore on, it became increasingly clear that a consensus would not be easily reached. The divisions within the community were deep, and the various factions were entrenched in their positions. However, the sayers of the law remained steadfast in their belief that a compromise could be found, and they continued to advocate for dialogue and understanding. Finally, as the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, the parley reached its conclusion. A series of proposals had been put forth, and the islanders had agreed to adopt a democratic system of governance, with a council made up of representatives from each faction. The sayers of the law would continue to serve as spiritual leaders and keepers of the island's moral code, but the decisions affecting the community would be made collectively by the council. With the framework for the island's new governance in place, the inhabitants set about the task of building their new society. It was a process marked by both triumphs and setbacks, as the islanders struggled to reconcile their differences and find common ground. But through it all, the guiding principles of compassion, understanding, and justice remained at the forefront, providing a beacon of hope in the face of adversity. As the weeks and months passed, the island of Dr. Moreau began to transform, both physically and socially. The scars of the past were gradually healed, as the inhabitants worked together to restore the island's natural beauty and build a thriving community based on the values they held dear. And so, despite the challenges and obstacles they faced, the islanders persevered, united in their commitment to creating a brighter future for all. The legacy of Dr. Moreau and his twisted experiments would not be forgotten, but it would not define the island's destiny. Instead, the island would become a symbol of hope and redemption, a testament to the power of compassion, understanding, and unity to overcome even the darkest of circumstances. Chapter 14. Dr. Moreau explains. In the wake of the parley, The inhabitants of the island sought to understand the true nature of their existence and the strange circumstances that had brought them together. As curiosity and questions grew, it became clear that answers were needed from the one person who had orchestrated their creation, the enigmatic Dr. Moreau. A small delegation, consisting of representatives from each faction, ventured to the doctor's abandoned laboratory, hoping to uncover the secrets of his work. The air was heavy with apprehension as they stepped inside, their eyes scanning the dark, cluttered space for any clues that might shed light on the doctor's twisted experiments. In the heart of the laboratory, they discovered a hidden room containing Dr. Moreau's personal journals and notes. There, among the dusty volumes, they found a detailed account of his experiments and the reasoning behind his actions. Dr. Moreau's writings revealed a brilliant yet deeply flawed mind, driven by an insatiable desire to understand and control the fundamental principles of life. His experiments were born of a conviction that humanity could be improved, and that he alone held the key to unlocking the full potential of the human form. By combining the attributes of humans and animals, he believed he could create a superior race of beings, capable of transcending the limitations of their original forms. The inhabitants of the island were both fascinated and horrified by the doctor's revelations, as they sought to reconcile the man's undeniable genius with the atrocities he had committed in the name of progress. In his writings, they found a complex portrait of a man who was at once a visionary and a monster, driven to the brink of madness by his unrelenting quest for knowledge and power. As they delved deeper into the doctor's research, they discovered that his experiments had not always been successful. Many of his early attempts had resulted in grotesque and unstable creatures, unable to survive outside the confines of the laboratory. It was only through a painstaking process of trial and error that Dr. Moreau had eventually perfected his techniques, culminating in the creation of the island's inhabitants. However, as the islanders continued to explore the laboratory, they uncovered a chilling truth that would shake them to their very core. Dr. Moreau had not intended for his creations to live free, autonomous lives. Instead, he had designed them to be completely subservient to his will, existing only to fulfill his twisted vision of a utopian society. This realization struck a heavy blow to the inhabitants' newfound sense of identity and purpose, as they grappled with the knowledge that their very existence was built upon a foundation of exploitation and suffering. They questioned whether they could truly escape the shadow of their creator, or if they were doomed to be forever haunted by the legacy of Dr. Moreau's madness. In the face of this devastating revelation, the islanders were forced to confront the harsh reality of their origins and the challenges that lay ahead. They recognized that they could not change the past, but they could choose to forge a new path, one that was built upon the values of compassion, understanding, and justice they had come to embrace. As they left the laboratory, the islanders carried with them a renewed sense of determination and hope. They were no longer simply the products of Dr. Moreau's twisted experiments. They were individuals with the power to shape their own destinies and redefine the legacy of the island. With the truth of their origins now revealed, the inhabitants of the island set out to build a future that was truly their own, free from the influence of their creator. They understood that the journey would not be easy, and that the scars of the past would not be easily erased. But they also knew that they had the strength and resilience to overcome the obstacles that lay before them. United by their shared experiences and the knowledge of their true nature, the islanders were prepared to face whatever challenges the future held, together. In the weeks and months that followed, The inhabitants of the island worked tirelessly to establish a society built on the principles of cooperation and mutual respect. They developed a system of governance that allowed each individual to have a voice in the decisions that affected their lives, ensuring that the abuses of power that had defined Dr. Moreau's reign would never be repeated. As they labored to construct new homes, schools, and places of worship, the islanders also set about healing the emotional wounds inflicted by their creator. They shared their stories and experiences, supporting one another in their efforts to come to terms with their painful pasts and embrace their newfound freedom. In time, the island became a haven for those seeking refuge from the outside world, a place where the scars of the past could be transformed into a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. The islanders' dedication to rebuilding their lives and creating a better future for themselves and their children served as a shining beacon of hope in a world that had so often been darkened by cruelty and despair. As the years passed, the inhabitants of the island continued to honor the memory of their struggles and the sacrifices made by those who had come before them. They pledged never to forget the lessons of their past, and to ensure that the legacy of Dr. Moreau's experiments would serve as a cautionary tale for future generations. The island, once a place of unspeakable horrors, had become a sanctuary of hope and healing, a testament to the power of the human spirit to overcome adversity and forge a brighter future. The inhabitants of the island stood as living proof that even in the darkest of times, there remained the potential for redemption, renewal, and the triumph of love over fear. And so, the legacy of Dr. Moreau and his twisted experiments lived on, not as a monument to one man's hubris and cruelty, but as a reminder of the indomitable spirit of those who had survived his reign and built a better world in the face of unthinkable adversity. The island had been forever changed by the trials and tribulations of its past, but in the end, it had emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to chart its own course toward a brighter future. Chapter 15. Concerning the Beast Folk. As the island community continued to flourish, the question of the beast folk's place within this new society remained a matter of great debate. Though they had been created by Dr. Moreau and subjected to his cruel experiments, the beast folk were no less deserving of the chance to forge their own destinies and reclaim their humanity. For some of the island's human inhabitants, the mere existence of the beast folk served as a painful reminder of the horrors they had endured at the hands of their creator. They argued that the beast folk should be segregated from the rest of the community, believing that their animalistic nature and the influence of their past would inevitably lead to chaos and conflict. Others, however, saw the potential for redemption within the beast folk, recognizing that they too had been victims of Dr. Moreau's twisted vision. They believed that, given the opportunity to learn and grow within the nurturing environment of the island, the beast folk could overcome their animal instincts and become valuable members of society. Ultimately, it was decided that the beast folk would be integrated into the island community, with measures in place to ensure their gradual assimilation into human society. Specialized schools and educational programs were established to teach the beast folk the skills and knowledge they would need to navigate the complexities of their new lives. As time went on, the beast folk demonstrated a remarkable capacity for growth and adaptation. They proved to be diligent students, eager to learn and contribute to the betterment of the island. With each passing day, the lines that had once divided human and beast began to blur, as the islanders worked together to build a brighter future for all. Despite their progress, the beast folk continued to grapple with the lingering remnants of their animal nature. The specter of Dr. Moreau's experiments cast a long shadow over their lives, and some struggled with the instincts that still lay dormant within them. It was a constant battle to keep these primal urges at bay and to maintain the delicate balance between the human and the animal. However, the islanders were steadfast in their support of the beast folk, recognizing that the path to redemption was not an easy one. They offered guidance and encouragement, helping the beast folk to overcome their fears and embrace their humanity. Together, they forged a powerful bond, united by their shared experiences and their determination to overcome the darkness of their past. The island became a sanctuary for the beast folk, a place where they could shed the burdens of their past and begin anew. In time, they grew to become not only valuable members of the community, but also symbols of hope and resilience in the face of adversity. As the years passed, the islanders bore witness to the remarkable transformation of the beast folk, marveling at the power of the human spirit to triumph over even the most unimaginable of circumstances. The beast folk, once the subjects of Dr. Moreau's twisted experiments, had emerged as living testaments to the strength of the human will and the boundless capacity for growth and change. In this new society, the legacy of Dr. Moreau lived on, not as a monument to his cruelty, but as a testament to the power of love, understanding, and determination to overcome even the darkest of his stories. For the islanders, the beast folk would forever stand as symbols of hope and redemption, a reminder of the incredible potential that lay within each and every one of them. Chapter 16. How the Beast Folk Tasted Blood. Despite the progress that had been made in assimilating the beast folk into the island community, there remained a lingering fear among the human inhabitants. They worried that, beneath the thin veneer of civility, the beast folk's primal instincts might still be stirred by the taste of blood. This fear would prove to be well-founded, as the island would soon experience an event that would shatter the fragile peace they had built. It began with the arrival of a new shipwreck survivor, a young man named Edward. Unaware of the island's unique history, Edward inadvertently set in motion a chain of events that would have dire consequences for all. While exploring the island, he stumbled upon a wounded rabbit, which he killed and brought back to the settlement for food. The sight of the rabbit's blood awakened something deep within the beast folk, stirring long-repressed urges that they had been taught to suppress. As the scent of blood filled the air, a collective frenzy seemed to grip the beast folk, and they began to fight amongst themselves, their animal instincts taking over. The human inhabitants of the island watched in horror as the beast folk they had come to know and trust turned on one another in a brutal display of savagery. It was a chilling reminder of the thin line that separated the human from the animal, and the fragile nature of the society they had built. In an attempt to restore order, the islanders intervened, forcibly separating the beast folk and attempting to reason with them. They reminded the beast folk of the progress they had made and the bonds of trust that had been forged between them. Gradually, the beast folk began to regain control of their instincts, and the frenzy subsided. The incident served as a stark warning to the islanders of the dangers that lay beneath the surface of their idyllic paradise. They recognized that, despite their best efforts, the beast folk's past could not be entirely forgotten, and that the struggle to maintain the delicate balance between human and animal would be an ongoing one. In the aftermath of the incident, the islanders took measures to prevent a recurrence of such violence. The consumption of meat was strictly forbidden, and the beast folk were closely monitored to ensure that their animal instincts remained in check. In addition, the islanders redoubled their efforts to educate the beast folk, instilling in them a deeper understanding of the importance of self-control and restraint. As the years passed, the memory of the incident faded, but its lessons remained firmly ingrained in the minds of the islanders. They understood that the path to redemption was a difficult and treacherous one, fraught with challenges and setbacks. Yet, they also believed in the capacity of the human spirit to overcome these obstacles and to ultimately triumph over the darkness of their past. The beast folk, for their part, were forever changed by the incident. They were acutely aware of the thin line that separated them from their animal nature, and they were determined to prove themselves worthy of the trust that the islanders had placed in them. They became even more diligent in their studies and more devoted to the pursuit of knowledge, striving to ensure that the mistakes of their past would not be repeated. As the islanders and the beast folk continued their journey towards redemption, they did so with a newfound understanding of the challenges that lay ahead. They recognized that, in order to create a truly harmonious society, they would need to constantly remain vigilant against the forces of darkness that threatened to consume them. Yet, despite these challenges, the islanders and the beast folk remained united in their determination to build a better world. They believed that, together, they could overcome the darkness of their past and create a brighter future, where the human and the animal could coexist in peace and harmony. This belief became the driving force behind their continued efforts to transform the island into a beacon of hope, where the lessons of their past could serve as a guide for the generations to come. Through their shared experiences, the islanders and the beast folk forged bonds that transcended the boundaries of their divergent origins. They learned from one another, overcoming their fears and prejudices, and discovering that, despite their differences, they shared a common goal: the pursuit of a better life. Together, they worked to build a society that was founded on principles of compassion, understanding, and cooperation. They developed a system of governance that allowed for the unique needs of both humans and beast folk to be addressed, ensuring that all members of the community had a voice in shaping the future of the island. As time passed, the island became a shining example of the power of redemption and the resilience of the human spirit. The islanders and the beast folk showed that, despite their troubled past, they were capable of overcoming their baser instincts and forging a new path forward, one that held the promise of a brighter future for all. Yet, even as the islanders celebrated their achievements, they remained ever mindful of the lessons of their past. They understood that, in order to preserve the delicate balance that they had worked so hard to achieve, they would need to remain vigilant against the forces that threatened to undermine their fragile peace. They recognized that the path to redemption was not an easy one, and that it would require constant effort and vigilance to maintain. However, they also knew that, through their shared commitment to a better future, they could overcome the darkness that had once threatened to consume them and build a world that was founded on the principles of unity, compassion, and understanding. In the end, the story of the island of Dr. Moreau serves as a testament to the power of the human spirit to triumph over adversity and to the potential for redemption that exists within all of us. It is a story of hope, perseverance, and the unwavering belief that, together, we can overcome the challenges that we face and build a brighter future for ourselves and for the generations to come. Chapter 17. The Lawmaker. It was in the aftermath of the beast folk's taste of blood that the island community faced a period of profound introspection. Having recognized the danger that their inherent primal instincts posed to the delicate balance they had established, the inhabitants of the island sought to reinforce the fragile peace that had been so painstakingly built. In response to the growing concerns, a wise and thoughtful figure emerged, taking on the mantle of the lawmaker. The lawmaker, a human of great intellect and empathy, felt compelled to protect the island's inhabitants from the destructive impulses that threatened to tear their society apart. He sought to create a framework that would govern the behavior of both the humans and the beast folk, ensuring that the island remained a sanctuary for all who called it home. The lawmaker recognized that, in order to truly succeed, the laws would need to be both fair and comprehensive, addressing the unique needs and desires of the island's diverse population. With this in mind, he began the arduous task of drafting the laws of the island, a set of rules and guidelines that sought to define the rights and responsibilities of each member of the community. The laws of the island were built upon a foundation of mutual respect and understanding, emphasizing the importance of empathy, cooperation, and self-discipline. They addressed a wide range of issues, from the treatment of animals and the preservation of the environment to the conduct of trade and the resolution of disputes. Through these laws, the lawmaker sought to create a society in which all members could coexist peacefully, free from the fear of violence or oppression. As the laws of the island took shape, the lawmaker sought the counsel of the island's inhabitants, inviting them to voice their concerns and offer their insights. Through this process of collaboration, the laws were refined and expanded, becoming a living document that reflected the collective wisdom and experience of the island's diverse population. When the laws of the island were finally completed, they were presented to the community in a solemn ceremony. The lawmaker, standing before the gathered assembly of humans and beast folk, spoke passionately about the importance of the laws and the role they would play in safeguarding the future of the island. Our island is a haven, a sanctuary for those who seek to escape the brutality of the world beyond our shores, he said. But we must never forget the darkness that lurks within us all. We must remain vigilant, guarding against the impulses that threaten to destroy the peace we have worked so hard to achieve. These laws are our shield, our bulwark against the chaos that lies in wait. Let us embrace them, and in doing so, ensure that our island remains a beacon of hope and redemption for all who seek it. The laws of the island were met with widespread approval, and soon became the cornerstone of the island's society. They were enforced with fairness and compassion, ensuring that all members of the community were treated equitably and that transgressions were dealt with swiftly and justly. Under the guidance of the lawmaker, the island continued to flourish, its inhabitants learning to navigate the complexities of their shared existence. The humans and the beast folk, bound by their shared commitment to the laws, found new ways to cooperate and support one another, their once divided communities becoming increasingly intertwined. Yet, even as the island prospered, the lawmaker remained ever vigilant, aware that the darkness that had once threatened to consume them still lurked in the shadows. He understood that the laws alone were not enough to guarantee their safety, and that the path to redemption was a journey without end. But as long as the island's inhabitants remained committed to the ideals embodied in the laws of the island, there was hope that they might continue to defy the darkness and chart a course toward a brighter, more harmonious future. In time, the lawmaker's wisdom and dedication became the stuff of legend, and his name was spoken with reverence and gratitude by the island's inhabitants. His tireless efforts to protect and uplift his community inspired others to follow in his footsteps. instilling a sense of pride and responsibility in the generations that came after him. As the years passed, the laws of the island continued to evolve, adapting to the changing needs and circumstances of the community. The island's inhabitants remained steadfast in their commitment to the principles enshrined in the laws, understanding that their adherence to these rules was the key to their continued survival. Despite the many challenges they faced, the island's inhabitants persevered, their resilience and determination serving as a testament to the strength of the human spirit. They found solace and comfort in the knowledge that they were part of something greater than themselves, a collective endeavor to build a society that transcended the limitations of their own flawed natures. But the legacy of Dr. Moreau was not forgotten, nor was it entirely vanquished. The specter of the mad scientist's ambitions and the terrible consequences of his experiments served as a cautionary tale, a reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition and the potential for darkness to take root within even the most well-intentioned of hearts. The island, once the site of unimaginable suffering, had been transformed into a refuge, a place where the wounds of the past could be healed, and where the hope for a better future could take root. Through their unwavering commitment to the laws of the island and the principles they embodied, the humans and the beast folk had forged a bond that transcended the divisions of their disparate origins, proving that even in the darkest of times, the light of hope and redemption could never be truly extinguished. Chapter 18. The Reversion of the Beast Folk. A delicate balance had been established on the island, with the laws of the island serving as the foundation upon which this new society was built. But as the years passed, the natural order of things began to reassert itself, and the line between man and beast grew increasingly blurred. It seemed that the island's inhabitants were not entirely immune to the inexorable pull of their primal instincts, and the specter of regression loomed ominously over their once thriving community. Rumblings of discontent began to emerge, with whispers of rebellion echoing through the island's dense foliage. Some of the beast folk, frustrated by the constraints imposed upon them by the laws of the island, yearned for the freedom to indulge their basest desires, to embrace the wildness that still coursed through their veins. As these sentiments festered and spread, the island's inhabitants found themselves at a crossroads, torn between their loyalty to the laws and the allure of their animalistic natures. It was during this time of turmoil that a charismatic and cunning figure rose to prominence among the beast folk. This individual, endowed with a silver tongue and a keen understanding of the weaknesses of others, sought to exploit the growing unrest for his own ends. He challenged the authority of the lawmaker and the laws themselves, questioning their legitimacy and fanning the flames of rebellion. The island, once a bastion of order and cooperation, was plunged into chaos, as the fragile bonds that held its inhabitants together began to fray. Fights erupted, blood was shed, and the once peaceful community was torn asunder by the ravages of conflict. The ideals that had guided them for so long were cast aside in the pursuit of power and vengeance, and the island's inhabitants found themselves spiraling back into the darkness from which they had emerged. The lawmaker, witnessing the unraveling of all that he had worked so tirelessly to build, was faced with an agonizing decision. He could stand by and watch as the island descended into anarchy, or he could take drastic action, even if it meant sacrificing a part of himself in the process. With a heavy heart, he chose the latter, determined to preserve the fragile balance that had allowed his people to flourish. In a desperate bid to restore order, the lawmaker enacted a series of draconian measures, punishing those who defied the laws with brutal efficiency. The once beloved leader was transformed, in the eyes of his people, into a figure of fear and dread. But the lawmaker understood that his actions, however terrible they might be, were necessary if the island was to survive. As the bloody conflict raged on, the lawmaker found himself locked in a deadly game of cat and mouse with the cunning instigator of the rebellion. The two adversaries, each determined to emerge victorious, engaged in a series of increasingly vicious confrontations, with the fate of the island hanging in the balance. In the end, the lawmaker was forced to confront the terrible truth that had been gnawing at the edges of his consciousness for some time: that the line between man and beast was not so easily erased, and that the darkness that had birthed the beast folk could never be truly vanquished. But even as he grappled with this realization, he refused to abandon the ideals that had guided him for so long, choosing instead to fight on in the name of justice and compassion. And so, the struggle for the soul of the island continued, a testament to the enduring conflict between the forces of order and chaos that lay at the heart of the human condition. Though the battle lines had shifted, and the faces of the combatants had changed, the struggle itself remained as timeless and as poignant as ever, serving as a stark reminder of the fragile nature of civilization and the ever-present danger of regression. As the lawmaker continued to wage war against the rebellion, the island itself seemed to mirror the conflict unfolding within its inhabitants. The once lush and verdant paradise began to show signs of decay, with vegetation wilting and dying as the battle raged on. The once clear waters that surrounded the island were now choked with debris and the detritus of war, reflecting the darkness that had descended upon this once idyllic haven. In the midst of this chaos, there were those among the beast folk who clung to the remnants of their humanity, fighting to uphold the laws and preserve the tenuous bonds that had once united them. They understood that the path to salvation lay not in succumbing to their basest instincts, but in striving to transcend them, even in the face of overwhelming adversity. But as the conflict intensified, it became increasingly clear that the island could not sustain the weight of the battle being waged upon its shores. The delicate balance that had once allowed the beast folk to coexist with one another had been irrevocably shattered, and the island itself seemed poised on the brink of destruction. In a last-ditch effort to save the island and its inhabitants, the lawmaker devised a desperate plan. He sought to forge a new alliance with the remnants of the loyal beast folk, hoping to marshal their collective strength and put an end to the rebellion once and for all. The lawmaker understood that this final gambit was fraught with risk, but he believed that the potential rewards far outweighed the dangers. As the loyalists and the lawmaker prepared for their final confrontation with the rebels, the island held its breath, waiting to see which side would emerge victorious. The fate of the island hung in the balance, with the outcome of this final battle poised to determine the course of its future. The clash that followed was fierce and brutal, with both sides fighting with a ferocity born of desperation. But in the end, it was the lawmaker and his loyalists who emerged victorious. Their unwavering commitment to the laws and the principles they embodied proving too powerful for the rebels to overcome. In the aftermath of this titanic struggle, the island was forever changed. The cost of victory had been immense, with the landscape scarred and desolate, a haunting reminder of the conflict that had torn the community apart. But amidst the ruins, there remained a glimmer of hope, a testament to the indomitable spirit of the lawmaker and those who had fought alongside him. As the survivors began the arduous process of rebuilding their lives and their home, they did so with a renewed sense of purpose, determined to learn from the mistakes of their past and create a brighter future for themselves and for the generations to come. The battle between man and beast would continue. But for now, the island stood as a testament to the power of hope, resilience, and the enduring struggle for a better world. Chapter 19. The Thing That Moreau and Montgomery Beheld. The morning sun cast its rays through the canopy of leaves, painting the forest in a golden hue. I awoke, tense and fearful from the previous day's events. The beast folk had tasted blood, and the island had become a place of terror. As I wandered through the forest, I pondered my situation. I was a stranger on this island, surrounded by creatures of science and madness. Yet, as dangerous as the world around me was, I could not help but feel an inexplicable fascination with the mysteries it contained. The forest was a labyrinth of shadows, and I felt the pressing weight of the unknown bearing down upon me. As I continued through the dense foliage, I suddenly stumbled upon a clearing. Before me stood Dr. Moreau and Montgomery, their faces pale and contorted in terror. I approached cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. I could see that they were staring at something in the distance, some unimaginable horror that had rendered them speechless. Following their gaze, I beheld a sight that would haunt me for the remainder of my days. A monstrous creature stood at the edge of the clearing, a grotesque amalgamation of man and beast. Its skin was a patchwork of fur and scales, its limbs twisted and malformed. The creature's eyes were filled with a primal rage, and its mouth dripped with blood. Moreau and Montgomery exchanged fearful glances, their eyes wide with horror. I could see the realization dawn upon them that their experiments had gone too far. These creatures, their own twisted creations, had become uncontrollable and were now a threat to their creators. As the monstrous being approached, Montgomery raised his rifle and fired. The shot rang through the air, but it seemed to have no effect on the creature. It continued its advance, snarling and growling with a ferocity that sent shivers down my spine. Moreau, in a desperate attempt to regain control, began to shout at the creature. "Back, you abomination! Back, I say!" He raised his arms in a futile gesture, trying to exert his authority over the beast. But it was to no avail. The creature lunged at Moreau, its claws slashing through the air. Montgomery, acting on instinct, rushed forward to defend his colleague. He struck the creature with the butt of his rifle, momentarily stunning it. Moreau, seizing the opportunity, grabbed a large rock and brought it down upon the creature's head with all his might. The beast fell to the ground, lifeless and broken. Moreau and Montgomery stood over their fallen creation, their faces etched with a mixture of horror and sorrow. They had played God, tampering with the very fabric of life, and now they were reaping the consequences of their actions. I stood rooted to the spot, unable to tear my gaze from the scene before me. I had witnessed the true nature of the island and the horrors it contained. The line between man and beast had been irrevocably blurred, and there was no going back. The sun continued to rise, casting its light upon the blood-soaked earth. Moreau, Montgomery, and I stood in silence, united by the grim understanding that our lives had been forever changed by the dark secrets of the island. And as the shadows of the trees stretched out before us, I could not help but wonder what other horrors awaited us in the depths of this terrible place. Chapter 20. The Madness of Moreau. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a sinister red glow over the island. The tension in the air was palpable, and I could sense the growing unrest among the beast folk. Malinged, the strange dog-like creature who had been a loyal servant to Moreau and Montgomery, had been acting strangely. His eyes were wild and unfocused, and he seemed to be consumed by an insatiable hunger. His once docile demeanor had been replaced by a seething aggression that struck fear into the hearts of the other beast folk. Moreau and Montgomery watched Maling with growing concern. They had seen the effects of the reversion before, but Maling's descent into madness seemed particularly rapid and violent. It was as if some dark force had taken hold of him, driving him to the brink of insanity. As Maling's condition worsened, the other beast folk began to avoid him. They whispered among themselves, their voices filled with a mixture of fear and pity. It was clear that they believed Maling to be beyond saving, a victim of the dark forces that governed their existence. One fateful day, Maling's madness reached a fever pitch. He roamed the island, snarling and snapping at anything that moved. His once human eyes were now filled with a feral rage, and his teeth had grown long and sharp, glinting in the dying light of the day. The other beast folk cowered in fear, hiding from Maling's wrath. Moreau and Montgomery, realizing that something had to be done, decided to confront their creation and attempt to restore order to the island. Armed with rifles and a grim determination, they set out in search of Maling. I accompanied them, filled with a morbid curiosity and a desire to see the madness of Maling firsthand. We found him near the edge of the forest, tearing at the carcass of a fallen beast. His face was covered in blood, and his eyes were wild with hunger. The sight of him sent a shiver down my spine, and I suddenly understood the true horror of the reversion. Moreau stepped forward, raising his rifle and aiming it at Maling's head. "Maling?" he called out, his voice steady despite the fear that must have been coursing through him. "You must cease this madness. Return to us, and we will help you." Maling paused in his feasting, his head slowly turning to face Moreau. For a moment, it seemed as if a flicker of recognition passed through his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by the savage rage that now consumed him. With a snarl, Maling lunged at Moreau, his claws slashing through the air. Montgomery fired his rifle, the shot striking Maling in the shoulder and sending him crashing to the ground. As Maling lay there, his breath coming in ragged gasps, Moreau approached him. "You were once a loyal servant, Maling," he said softly, his voice filled with a mixture of sorrow and resignation. "But now, you are a danger to us all." With a heavy heart, Moreau raised his rifle once more and fired, ending Maling's suffering and the madness that had consumed him. As we stood over Maling's lifeless body, I could not help but feel a deep sense of sorrow for the creature that had once been so loyal and obedient. The island of Dr. Moreau was a place of darkness and horror, a place where the line between man and beast was constantly being blurred. And as the sun set over the island, casting its blood-red light upon the twisted forms of the beast folk, I could not help but wonder what other horrors awaited us in this nightmarish realm. The death of Maling sent a wave of unease through the community of beast folk. They whispered among themselves, their voices low and fearful, as they discussed the implications of Maling's descent into madness. If one of their own could revert so quickly and violently, were any of them truly safe? Moreau and Montgomery, too, seemed troubled by the events that had transpired. Their once unshakable confidence in their experiments was now tainted by doubt, and they began to question the wisdom of their attempts to create a race of creatures that straddled the line between human and animal. As the days passed, The atmosphere on the island grew increasingly tense. The beast folk, once united by their shared experience of transformation, now found themselves divided by fear and suspicion. Some began to secretly question the authority of Moreau and Montgomery, wondering if their creators had truly understood the consequences of their experiments. This growing unrest did not go unnoticed by Moreau and Montgomery. They recognized the need to reassert their control over the beast folk and remind them of the laws that govern their existence. They gathered the beast folk together for a solemn assembly, where they reiterated the importance of adhering to the laws and maintaining the delicate balance between their human and animal natures. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting its final rays of light upon the island, I could not help but feel a sense of foreboding. The events that had unfolded on the island of Dr. Moreau were a stark reminder of the dangers that lurked within the hearts of both man and beast, and I knew that our struggles were far from over. The death of Maling marked a turning point in our time on the island, a dark omen of the trials that were yet to come. It was a reminder that the line between man and beast was a fragile one, and that even the most brilliant minds could not truly tame the wild forces of nature. As we faced the uncertain future that lay before us, I could not help but wonder what other horrors awaited us in the heart of darkness that was the island of Dr. Moreau. Chapter 21. The Finding of Moreau. In the days that followed the tragic death of Maling, the island was gripped by a palpable sense of dread. The once orderly society of the beast folk had begun to unravel, and tensions ran high among the creatures. The weight of what had occurred hung heavily upon us all, and it became clear that the fragile balance that had been so carefully cultivated was in danger of being irrevocably shattered. It was during this tumultuous time that I became increasingly determined to discover the truth about Moreau and the nature of his experiments. I resolved to find the doctor and confront him about the secrets he had been hiding from us. With a newfound resolve, I set out to search the island, determined to bring the truth to light. My journey led me through the tangled undergrowth of the island, where the twisted forms of the beast folk seemed to watch me with wary eyes. The oppressive heat and the haunting cries of the creatures made for a nerve-wracking journey. But I pressed on, driven by my desire to expose Moreau's secrets. At last, I came upon a hidden path that led deep into the heart of the island. Following it, I discovered a secluded laboratory, shrouded in shadows and filled with the lingering scent of chemicals. It was here that I found Moreau, hunched over a table covered in vials and strange instruments. The sight of the doctor in his hidden sanctum filled me with a mixture of horror and fascination. I had come in search of answers, and here before me was the man responsible for the nightmare that was the island of Dr. Moreau. As I confronted him, demanding that he explain his actions, Moreau slowly turned to face me, his eyes cold and unyielding. With a calmness that belied the chaos that reigned on the island, Moreau began to speak. He told me the story of his life and the events that had led him to this place. A tale of scientific ambition and a twisted desire to push the boundaries of what was deemed possible. He spoke of his experiments, of his attempts to transform the animals into beings that could walk and talk like men, and of the laws he had created to govern their existence. As I listened to his chilling confession, I was struck by the sheer madness of his endeavor. The doctor had sought to play God, to reshape the natural order of things, and in doing so, had unleashed a horror upon the world. It was clear that he had lost all sense of morality, blinded by his own twisted genius. I left the laboratory with a heavy heart, weighed down by the knowledge of Moreau's terrible experiments. As I made my way back to the encampment, I knew that the events that had transpired on the island were only the beginning of a much larger and more terrifying story, one that would haunt me for the rest of my days. For in the depths of that secret laboratory, I had seen the true face of evil, and I knew that the island of Dr. Moreau was a place from which I would never truly escape. Chapter 22. The Last Days of Moreau. In the days following my fateful encounter with Moreau in his hidden laboratory, the island continued to spiral into chaos. The beast folk, once held in check by the doctor's laws, began to revert to their primal instincts. The air was thick with fear, and it seemed as though the island itself was beginning to reject the unnatural creations that had been forged within its depths. It was during this time of upheaval that Moreau's own undoing came to pass. The doctor, driven by his insatiable curiosity and relentless ambition, continued to push the boundaries of his research, seemingly heedless of the mounting danger that surrounded him. I watched in horror as his experiments became increasingly reckless, his determination to unlock the secrets of life and death consuming him utterly. The end came swiftly and without warning. One evening, as the sky darkened and the air grew thick with tension, a terrible cry echoed across the island. I knew instinctively that something had gone horribly wrong, and with a sense of dread weighing heavily upon my heart, I made my way to the laboratory where I had last seen Moreau. As I approached the hidden entrance, I heard the sound of desperate struggle, the snarls and growls of a beast in mortal combat with its creator. With a sense of foreboding, I entered the laboratory, only to find Moreau locked in a desperate struggle with one of his own creations, a hideous hybrid of man and animal that had turned upon its master. In that moment, I saw the true horror of Moreau's ambition laid bare. The doctor's experiments had created a monster, a being that was neither man or beast, but something far more terrible. The creature, in its rage and confusion, had turned upon Moreau, and as I watched, it tore him apart, a fitting end for the man who had sought to defy the natural order of the world. With Moreau's death, the island seemed to fall under a dark curse. The remaining beast folk, freed from the doctor's control, began to revert back to their primal instincts, hunting and fighting one another in a desperate struggle for survival. It was a chilling reminder of the folly of man's attempts to play God, and a stark warning of the consequences of meddling with the forces of nature. As the days passed and the island continued its descent into anarchy, I knew that I could not remain in this place of madness and death. I resolved to make my escape, to leave the island and its terrible secrets behind me. But as I made my preparations, I was haunted by the knowledge that the horrors I had witnessed would stay with me forever. The island of Dr. Moreau had shown me the depths to which mankind could sink in pursuit of knowledge, and the terrible price that must be paid for such hubris. It was a lesson that would stay with me for the rest of my days, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked within the human heart. And so, with a heavy heart and a weary soul, I left the island, my mind filled with the terrible memories of the things I had seen and the knowledge of the horrors that had been unleashed upon the world. The island of Dr. Moreau would remain a haunted place, a testament to the terrible power of man's ambition and the folly of his attempts to bend the world to his will. As I sailed away from the cursed island, I knew that I would carry the scars of my time there with me for the rest of my life, a chilling reminder of the dark side of human nature and the terrible consequences of our unchecked ambition. The island of Dr. Moreau had shown me the face of true evil, and it was a sight that I would never forget. The journey away from the island was fraught with danger, as the sea seemed to be as unforgiving as the land I left behind. The knowledge that I was the sole witness to the horrors that had occurred there weighed heavily upon me. I felt a responsibility to share the truth with the world, to warn others of the perils that lay in wait for those who would meddle with the natural order of things. As the days turned into weeks, and the island of Dr. Moreau vanished into the distance, I found myself haunted by the memories of the beast folk and the twisted experiments that had created them. I wondered if there were other places, hidden away in the corners of the world, where similar horrors were being perpetrated, and shuddered at the thought of what other abominations might be lurking in the shadows. When at last I returned to civilization, I found myself changed by my experiences on the island. The world I had known before seemed somehow less real, less solid, as if the very fabric of reality had been torn apart by the things I had seen. I felt a profound sense of dislocation, a sense that I no longer belonged in the world of men. But I knew that I could not remain silent, that I had a duty to share my story with others, to warn them of the dangers of unchecked ambition and the terrible price that must be paid for meddling with the natural order of things. And so, I set about recording my experiences, committing them to paper in the hope that my words would serve as a warning to others, a cautionary tale of the darkness that lies within the human soul and the terrible consequences of our hubris. As I write these words, I can feel the shadows of the island of Dr. Moreau closing in around me, the memories of the beast folk and their tormented existence reaching out to me across the gulf of time and space. I know that I will never escape the horrors of that cursed place, that the taint of Moreau's experiments will cling to me for the rest of my days. But in sharing my story, I hope to offer a warning to others, a reminder of the perils that await those who would seek to play God and defy the natural order of the world. For in the end, the island of Dr. Moreau stands as a testament to the terrible power of man's ambition and the dark depths to which it can drive us when left unchecked. May these words serve as a cautionary tale, and may they help to guide others away from the path of darkness that I have trodden. For in the end, the true horror of the island of Dr. Moreau lies not in the monsters that were created there, but in the darkness of the human heart that gave them life.
Thank you for listening to Miniature Masterpiece. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more awesome content.